Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Honestly, not much really to say in regards to housekeeping or whatever, so let's get right into the news. First, let's hear a news story from Mexico, because developments are coming from Mexico, and it's not going to be what you think it is. Okay, so a news story has broken about how former Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto was accused of taking a $25 million spyware deal. So, former Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto allegedly received up to $25 million from two Israeli businessmen in exchange for facilitating deals involving surveillance technology, including the controversial Pegasus spyware. For those who don't know, the Pegasus spyware is a spyware developed by the Israeli cyber arms company NSO Group that is designed to be covertly and remotely installed on mobile phones running in iOS and Android, which has the ability to read your text messages, snoop in on your calls, collect your passwords, track your location, access the target device's microphone and camera, and harvesting information from the apps. And this is very important because apparently, if you are on iOS 16.6, you may already be compromised. And this goes on to state that an investigation by Israeli business outlet The Marker claims that the entrepreneurs Avishai Nerai and Uri Abeshner negotiated contracts during Peña Nieto's presidency, which strengthened ties between cybersecurity companies in Israel and Mexico. Central to those deals was the NSO Group, the Israeli firm behind Pegasus. And while, of course, like every single form of spyware and this type of thing, it's alleged to only be used to target people who are bad people, but this article goes on to state that, typically what ends up happening is that this spyware magically ends up being used against people who haven't done anything wrong except for reporting against government officials, including, in this case, a thing I actually mentioned in my 2018 Mexican presidential election video, how apparently the Pegasus app was used to target the journalist Carmen Aristegui. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I mentioned it in the original video where she was a journalist that kept reporting that Enrique Peña Nieto was being very obviously corrupt, and she was being spied on by Peña Nieto, I guess through the Pegasus malware. And to tie in the point of the previous podcast's main subject, I'm sure that definitely won't be used to exploit anti-Semitism by any stretch of the word. It's honestly just so surreal that that kind of situation could just happen, and it's apparently just very easy to do. Maybe I should have been listening to all those fucking YouTube sponsorships and start looking at the VPN sometime soon. But anyways, let's move on to the next story. The US has issued sanctions against the UN investigator probing abuses in Gaza. The Trump administration announced Wednesday that it is issuing sanctions against an independent investigator tasked with probing human rights abuses in the Palestinian territories, the latest effort in the United States to punish critics of Israel's 21-year genocide in Gaza. The State Department decision to impose sanctions on Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur for the West Bank and Gaza, follows an unsuccessful U.S. pressure campaign to force the international body to remove her from the post. It comes as the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is visiting Washington this week to meet with President Donald Trump and other officials about the genocide in Gaza and more. This is more to show the insanity of the situation. Benjamin Netanyahu is allowed to murder 60,000 Palestinians, and he's apparently just walking free with no punishment. Meanwhile, the woman who calls them out for doing said thing is apparently being punished for saying objective facts. And literally nothing is going to happen. Israel's still going to be part of the UN. The UN's not going to do anything to actually punish Israel. And, la-di-da-di-da. Everything is going to get worse. Even though literally every single thing makes no sense for the United States to be. It makes sense, of course, for the United States, establishments to be supportive of Israel, because of course they are very much in bed with Israel in a lot of the actual endeavors that are going on, their geopolitical interests obviously align, but it's in every other sense of the word it makes no sense, especially considering just look at any poll on the Israel issue now. It's literally latest poll, Republicans under 50 fucking hate Israel, and every single other voting demographic doesn't like Israel at all. Literally independents and Democrats hate Israel. The only thing that is keeping Republicans in support of Israel is the old people in the party. It's just still honestly really insane. At this point, there's not much else for me to say. I'll just move on to the next story, which is somewhat an old story, but also a new story, and also will be a future story. Basically, the day this episode comes out, the Israeli Knesset is going to be voting on officially impeaching Ayman Odeh. And I'm here to basically just say, if it, I'm pretty sure, I guess you guys can, see the news. I guess the news story will be out either by the time this episode comes out, or maybe a little bit after this episode comes out, but, this is basically just me giving another bit of a update on the situation, and, it's the unfortunate fact that it is 100% going to happen. Ayman Odeh is going to be impeached in the Israeli Knesset because of nothing. When I originally covered this story, the thing that I said got Ayman Odeh in trouble was actually apparently not the thing that got him in trouble. It was just a coincidence that he did. Well, I guess it was a coincidence, quote unquote, that thing happened and then the impeachment inquiry happened. Because apparently the specific thing that actually got him in trouble was when he posted a tweet saying that he was grateful that the hostages on the Israeli and Palestinian sides were released. That is the thing that is apparently on the official record as to why he got in trouble. That is literally, honestly, just more indicative of what Israel is than what the fucking original thing I thought got him in trouble was. He got in trouble for saying that he is grateful that the people on both sides of the conflict were able to be happy and were able to find a peaceful solution and were able to possibly end the war. That's what got him in trouble. That's the thing that got Ayman Odeh in trouble. And that's the thing that is apparently going to get him impeached. Because, despite the fact that over 120 former members of the Knesset has openly posted a joint letter saying, hey, this is a stupid idea. Don't do this. They're basically explaining, this is literally the worst thing that could possibly happen. This is the most fascistic thing that could possibly ever happen in the history of the Knesset. If this happens, there's no going back. There is literally no going back. There is nothing that can happen that will allow us to go back to a position before that. Yair Lapid, the leader of the so-called Israeli opposition, is spearheading the effort to impeach him. Literally, Yair Lapid has stated that when the day comes, when the impeachment vote finally happens, he will vote for it. And this is a very important thing, because when Ofer Kasif was almost impeached, Yair Lapid was actually one of the big people who was saying, hey, we shouldn't do this. This is bad. We shouldn't do this. And that led to a lot of the Yesh Atid party to sit out of the impeachment, which is the only thing that led to Ofer Kasif surviving his impeachment trial, because they didn't meet the vote threshold. In this situation, that means that a majority of Yesh Atid probably will vote for the impeachment. And then that will literally put the vote just at 90. It'll be Netanyahu's coalition and Yesh Atid. And that's just including if those two are the only blocks that vote for it. There's a chance that there's another block. I don't know. I don't remember if Yisrael Bientu is part of the block or not. I don't think it is, but I think they're also spearheading the effort to ban Ayman Odeh from the Knesset. And it's when this starts, what happens next? Any semblance of democracy Israel had before then is going to disappear. And I'll be back the next week to give you the exact breakdown of the parties that voted for Ayman Odeh's impeachment. Literally, I have been desperately waiting at the Knesset website, just refreshing the page over and over again, because I did the same thing with Ofer Kasif. I might put Ofer Kasif's impeachment thing right here. I did one where it's a breakdown based on the party and vote total, and also a breakdown based on just vote total. And I want to do the same thing for Ayman Odeh, because one of the big things that I noticed about the last one, with the last impeachment inquiry, is a lot of people just said they just rejected the they didn't vote against Ofer Kasif's. They didn't say, we're not going to impeach Ofer Kasif. A lot of the people of the opposition sat it out. Some Yesh Atid people voted for the impeachment, but a majority of Yesh Atid voted against it. And the Labour Party, the Israeli Labour Party, the so-called Zionist left, all but one of them sat out of the vote. Only one of them actually was on the record saying, no, this is a bad idea, and I cannot condone this. I especially want to see how the Zionist left does in this one. I want to see. I genuinely want to see how they're going to do in this vote. Because if I had to hedge my bets, I'd say it would be a similar thing, where it's like, the majority of them are probably not going to necessarily, like, oppose the impeachment. They're just going to, like, try and pretend like they're going to take, like, a middle ground. Like, well, he did do some things that made us pop. That may be a little bit of sussy baka, but, you know, but then again, I haven't really seen much about, like, how they've actually responded to this specific impeachment inquiry, because there really isn't much to see. They've basically kind of been silent on this, as far as I can tell. Because, to be frank, the Zionist left really doesn't have much road in Israel anymore. I mean, I guess they're polling well, but, like, they don't really have much of a road in, like, the sense of, like, actual opposition to Netanyahu, really. Like, I mean, if you want to just oppose Netanyahu for the sake of opposing Netanyahu, then you're going to vote for Yesh Atid. If you're going to vote against Netanyahu for, like, actual substantive policy reasons, your only bet is, like, the Hadash Tal. That's basically your only bet. Like, the Zionist left has no really route at all. But whatever, let's just move on to the next story, because this next story is a bit interesting. So, 200 people were arrested in a chaotic immigration raid at a cannabis farm, and one of the workers was murdered by the ICE agents that were there. Federal immigration agents carried out immigration sweeps at 2 Southern California cannabis farms on Thursday, arresting about 200 suspected undocumented immigrants and prompting a heated standoff between authorities and hundreds of protesters at a Ventura County site, and reports of farm worker being critically injured. At the time he was critically injured, now he's dead. Video shared on social media showed nearly a dozen agents using so-called less lethal ammunition on a crowd that had gathered near the Glass Home Farms, a large licensed cannabis greenhouse in Camarillo. Meanwhile, 35 miles up the road in Carpinteria, federal agents entered another Glass House Farms growing site where a smaller crowd gathered around the perimeter. The United Farm Workers Union said that it was told one worker fell several stories from the greenhouse, and Friday morning, UFW officials said the person was taken to the Ventura harmed with the ambulance. The UFW later said the worker died. Yeah. But on Friday afternoon, the local hospital said he was critically injured. So, like, basically, it seems like he is, like, in a... I'm pretty sure he's, like, officially dead, but, like, I don't know if this is, like, them covering their tracks, or, like, what. Especially considering I don't fucking trust ICE at all. Like, I mean, I basically don't fucking trust any law enforcement at all, especially ICE. Like, look, I don't trust fucking any of them. They're, like, nothing. Their leader, Tom Homan, went on the fucking record to be like, AOC, why are you not letting the cops do whatever the fuck they want? Why are you actually treating people like they have constitutional rights? It's like, you see why I fucking think that the cops are fucking disgusting people? They're like, oh, like literally, it's like, cops literally just like, the idea that people are given their constitutional rights and you have to actually treat them like human beings is like a foreign concept to them. Man, these people who have literally no markings and, like, no identification to prove that they're a federal agent, that literally just dress up in masks and fucking, like, grab people off the streets and then disappear them in their cars? Huh? Why are they so mad at this? It's like, this is, like, literally the worst thing ever. Like, the fact that ICE agents don't have a uniform, don't have a fucking badge or any form of identification, they don't even have to fucking, literally all the fucking videos of, like, ICE raids that I've seen, it's like, they just show up at random people and just, like, come with us now. It's like, you really expect them to, like, do anything bad? And that happened during this ICE raid, because one dude pulled out a gun and just started shooting at the ICE officers. And then people are like mad at the guy, like, oh, how dare he? How dare he? It's like, masked men showed up and just started dragging people away. What do you think is going to happen? And that is literally what they're doing. That is literally the point. I 100% guarantee you, that's the point. The reason why ICE doesn't have any official uniform, the reason why ICE doesn't have any official, like, badges, the reason why they're just random people showing up, they're trying to start an incident. That's what's happening. They're trying to start an incident, and then with that incident, they're then legally allowed, quote unquote, to start using more authoritative force. A thing that was literally predicted in a fucking Marvel product. Remember, if you guys remember, you might not know this, or you might know this, but, like, not that long ago, Marvel released a TV show called Daredevil Born Again, and there's literally a subplot where police officers wearing plain clothes started abusing their power, and then a vigilante, went to save the person that the police officers were, like, beating up. During the skirmish with the police officers, one of the police officers was taken out, and then they pull out their badge and like, police, get on the ground. It was like literally that was the point. They instigated this random guy into doing something that was breaking the law. And then due to that fact, they're now like pushing the people to go further. And that's exactly what's happening. That's why 1312, because these fucking idiots, these like, and this is the thing, they're gonna get away with it because that's just the logic of like that's the point of their job. They're brain dead drones who have no critical thinking of their own, that just follow what they do what they're told, and they're just like brainless saps. Like every form of law enforcement. That's why all of them basically have the same fucking political viewpoint of like bending the knee and sucking whoever is the biggest man in the room. That's all you are. You're all little piggies going to the trough. And the Lincoln Project just made a good ad for people like this. Then they should be watching that ad, because that's a big thing. Anyways, speaking of big things, the Jeffrey Epstein list, the Jeffrey Epstein situation, obviously guys, this is like some of the most obvious shit that was going to happen. Like, this is like literally the biggest, most obvious shit that was going to happen. I didn't even think that this was necessarily going to be what was going to happen. I honestly thought that Donald Trump was going to release a fake Jeffrey Epstein client list. I honestly thought that he was going to do that. But no, apparently, what has happened now is that apparently Donald Trump has announced that like the DOJ is going to be ending the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, that there's apparently no client list, and that he died by suicide. And they released footage of his cell right before the alleged suicide happened. And almost everybody was quick to point out that is obviously not true. Because literally in the weeks before, Pam Bondi and other people in the fucking Trump administration were making a big deal about how they had the Jeffrey Epstein client list. And that they were just going through the investigation. They were ready to release it. And it was on the desk. Pam Bondi literally said, it's on my desk, ready to be released. We just got to go through some things. But then magically, the Epstein client list just doesn't exist anymore. And apparently, this is the thing that broke the Trump supporters' backs. Because that was the thing. And I just don't understand why. I genuinely do not understand why. Because literally, this was the most obvious situation from day one. The day Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, allegedly, everybody knew it was Trump. Everybody knew. Trump was the president at the time of Jeffrey Epstein's death. He literally said, what happened, the things that he got in trouble. I don't understand how people, I really do not understand how people have this weird disconnect with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Literally, remember the Billy Bush tapes, the thing that got Donald Trump in trouble the first time, when he was accused of sexual assault, and then Hillary Clinton was and then he brought, what I did was words, and what Bill Clinton did was actions. Here are all the Bill Clinton sexual assault people. The things that were seen as the thing that could possibly end his campaign, those were accusations by Jeffrey Epstein's, people. Donald Trump, in his first administration, wanting to put the guy who got Jeffrey Epstein out of prison in his administration as Secretary of Labor. Trump is literally on the record as saying that he was friends with Epstein and that Epstein liked them a little young. One of his first scandals was him sexually assaulting 12-year-old girls. He didn't break ties with Jeffrey Epstein until he got arrested the second time. Trump literally has multiple other pedophiles in his circle. Matt Gaetz, Milo Yiannopoulos, Ali Alexander, Kid Rock, Ted Nugent. And the thing that all those fucking QAnon losers kept saying about, Bill Clinton and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were friends up to 2016. You're claiming that Bill Clinton was the one who was he's super close with Jeffrey Epstein. Him and Epstein, that's a little bit suspicious. It's yeah, you want to know who the third man in that crowd was? Trump. They were all buddies. And it's going on right now. Even now, there is still some sort of disconnect. Literally, there is massive disconnect. A lot of Trump supporters really still don't want to blame Trump. It's super obvious that it's Trump. It is 100% unequivocally obvious that Donald Trump is the reason why the Jeffrey Epstein client list is not released. He is 100% the reason why it's not going out. Like, in one of the big logics, like, and this is the thing, this is really why it's so fucking stupid for a lot of reasons, like, because one of the big things that, like, because Trump, like, MAGA fucking losers pretend like, oh, the administration, like, the Biden administration was so unfair to Donald Trump, it's so unfair to him, and it's so unfair, and he's, like, politicizing the court. It's like, oh, but if Trump's name was in the Epstein files, wouldn't they have used it? It's like, I mean, did you ever stop to consider the fact that maybe Joe Biden was, like, following the fucking law and, like, actually conducting an investigation? Did you ever stop to consider that? Like, as if, like, it's weird. Like, literally, Trump MAGA losers will always say things that just unequivocally disprove things they've been saying for years. It's like, oh, the Biden administration is so unfair. And yet somehow, even though the Epstein client list has had clips of it revealed that literally show Trump was in the black book, even though that's very abundantly clear, magically somehow, even though the situation is unfair, they're allowing the investigation to continue on normally and not immediately arresting Donald Trump out of a suspicion, rather than just simply allowing the investigation to come out. And yet somehow you're going to make the claim that Joe Biden was somehow unfair to Donald Trump, was politicizing the court against Donald Trump. Blah, 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 blah. Like, a lot of these MAGA people are also now trying to claim, like, the reason why this is going on is because Pam Bondi is specifically trying to save certain people in the administration. And that they need to get Matt Gaetz to do it. It's like, Matt Gaetz is a pedophile. Well, I guess technically he's an I don't fucking care. He fucked a 17-year-old girl. That's a fact. He resigned so that the investigation wouldn't be released. That's the only reason why he fucking resigned from Congress, to be in the administration, so he can get a get out of free. He can get a get out of jail free card. Now again, like, as I've said before, like the Biden administration was trying to continue the investigation. I mean, he was trying to continue the investigation. He was trying to follow the rules, and there were some things that were being released, some things that couldn't release, because that was the whole point of the investigation. Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of people are in the book. And the whole point was that they were trying to figure out who was in the book for, like, the actual, like, quote-unquote legitimate business of Jeffrey Epstein, because he was, like, a banker, a business financer, and who was there for the side business. Statistically, there has to be a decent amount of overlap between the two groups. And I would be hard-pressed to point out that, like, dude, it's very obvious that Bill Clinton and fucking Donald Trump were on both sides of the list. It's very obvious what was going on. But again, like, technically, it was all speculation. All allegations. If there was something concrete, they would probably be in jail right now. But the thing that really, really, really 100% solidifies it, like I mean, even though, yeah, I basically believed it all the way up to that point, because like, dude, I don't fucking care. Literally every single person on the Epstein list, just arrest all of them. I don't fucking care. I guarantee you there's not gonna be a single fucking person that I actually like that was on the list, really. Because one fucking allegation that a lot of people on the right wing try to claim, like, oh, but like your people are gonna get arrested. It's like, no, none of my people are gonna get arrested, because none of the people that I actually like and admire are going to be in the fucking crowd that would even allow to be. They wouldn't be invited to the fucking parties of, like, if Jeffrey Epstein wasn't a fucking sex criminal. They wouldn't have been invited to those parties. They're not invited to the fucking business financier banking. They're not being invited to those parties either. So they wouldn't be invited to the fucking, like diddling parties either. They wouldn't be invited to either of them. But the thing that really 100% solidified to me, like, Donald Trump is 100% on the Jeffrey Epstein client list, and 100% is on there for the worst reasons, is the reaction of Kash Patel. Kash Patel was a QAnon cultist. He has spent his entire career prior to joining the Trump administration talking about Epstein, like, just relentlessly going after Epstein. That's all he ever talked about. He talked about Epstein so much. Like, oh, the Clintons are on the Epstein list. Oh, Epstein. Like, he would go on and on and on. Because that was one of the big parts of the QAnon conspiracy theory. That Epstein was very important to, like, the Democrats' evil, satanic cabal. Like, that was part of the conspiracy theory. Conveniently, there were no Republicans on the list, but, like, it was only the Democrats somehow. Even though, again, Donald Trump is, like, one of the most closely affiliated people with fucking Jeffrey Epstein. And he would go, and that was one of the big things. Like, he was like, he really was hammering in. And then he was brought into the Trump administration. And he was literally told point blank, like, hey, like, he was literally like, the first thing I'm gonna do when I get into this office, I'm gonna get that Epstein client list out there, everybody. Then the second he actually gets into a position where he can actually read the Epstein client list, actually do work affiliated with his job in the Trump administration, magically, he doesn't want to talk about the Epstein client list anymore. Magically, like, he went on Joe Rogan. They're like, hey, what about the Epstein client list? He's like, magically, he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Interesting. And the same thing with a lot of other people in the Trump administration. They were at one point really hardcore into the Epstein client list. Like, oh, we need to release the Epstein client list. And then magically, when they're in positions where they can actually read the Epstein client list, magically, they don't want to talk about the Epstein client list anymore. So something must have happened when they opened that Epstein client list. Something must have happened when they must have found something in that Epstein client list that they probably don't want to be revealed to the public. And the Trump administration is doing a lot to try and hide that fact, because they released a footage to try and claim that Jeffrey Epstein didn't commit suicide. And even though it completely does not correspond with any of the available footage or videos that were already available of Jeffrey Epstein's like fucking jail cell, it also points out the fact that it was fucking edited and tampered with. And the first thing I saw of this footage was apparently someone doing an AI edit where Hillary Clinton walked into the fucking Epstein jail cell. So it's pretty clear that's what was going on. He's trying to use it to try and facilitate misinformation about the Jeffrey Epstein thing. Because he doesn't want people to actually know the truth. He doesn't want people to actually know the truth that he's the one who fucking diddled the kids. He doesn't want people to know that. Even though, again, it is the most fucking blatantly obvious thing that is going on. It's the most blatant, obvious thing that's going on. I really do not understand. And the people are going to be like, don't be mean to conservatives. I will be mean to conservatives. I don't get you. You guys live in a fantasy world where nothing makes sense. You literally looked at the guy who is Jeffrey Epstein's best friend up to his death. And then you're going, why didn't he release the Jeffrey Epstein client list? But anyways, let's move on to the last story. This one is the least related to politics, but it's actually something, and it's actually even an older story, but I kind of want to cover over this because, again, a little bit of good news. A little bit of possible good news. Possibly. A little bit. Maybe. Not really. It's regarding Nintendo, because you guys might know, there's this thing called the Switch 2 that just got released. The Nintendo Switch 2 is also known as the biggest test of my brand loyalty of Nintendo, because Nintendo has been really, really getting on my nerves in regards to some of the main issues that I have with the video game industry, and some of my biggest gripes about the copyright industry, the right to repair industry, all that kind of stuff. They've been getting really on my nerves with this particular thing, and it's really getting to a point. So one of the biggest things that has been going on right now is that Nintendo has been going really hard against a lot of the biggest things about previous game industry, previous game things. One of the first things that they did was they revealed that a lot of the games would kind of be really not cloud versions, but they would be of the download versions. Even the game cards wouldn't necessarily be the actual game. It would be a key that you would use to unlock the download version from the internet, which gets into a big problem in regards to the big issue being there's this huge thing going on right now about how a lot of games that are internet based are kind of going through a lot of problems, because once the system shuts down and once a lot of the online services go bye-bye, then it's what happens next? But one of the most controversial decisions that Nintendo has announced with this, well, they haven't, I don't think they've actually officially announced it, but it's been a thing that people are wait, hold on, because they found it out. They found that day one of the Switch 2 release, it would download a software. I think one of the first things that happened, they locked the Switch before release date, so if you got a Switch 2 before the release date, you wouldn't be able to play it. You wouldn't be able to do it. It was basically locked. But then there was another revelation where now Nintendo is because Nintendo is one of the game companies that has been really going hard against anything regarding piracy, modding, or anything of the sort. They really don't like modding. They like you buying their official hardware and nothing else. You can't, if a game's not being sold by them anymore, you can't buy it unofficially, you can't pirate it, you can't mod your game console, you can't do nothing to it. Nothing at all. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. And there would usually be some form of punishment in regards to that. It's a very common thing, the anti-piracy screens that was an internet trend a while ago, where people would make up fake anti-piracy screens, but that was based on a real thing that Nintendo would do, where it'd be hey, hold on, you're pirating this game, what the fuck? But the Switch 2 has discovered, people have discovered that the Switch 2 has a very draconian measure in regards to how the piracy in the mods would work. You see, the Switch 2 can detect if you're using a pirated game or a modded game or anything else, like anything that is not officially made by Nintendo. And Nintendo can officially turn off your Switch 2, just gone. Like, it just won't work. Like, it'll display an error code called 21244408. And it would basically, you can't play it. It would brick your console. Your console would literally just be a brick at that point. And that was the thing. I was like, if you want to play the console, you have to agree to this term. It's a term that you have to agree to play the console. It also, there was another thing where it's like, oh, basically you don't own anything in your console. We own the license to the console, and we're just licensing it. And it's another big thing about like the gaming like controversy where it's like now you don't own any of your console. You don't own any of your games anymore. You're buying the like. It's basically a slight rule that's been in place ever since the beginning of like buying home media and stuff. Where it's like, you don't own the actual media. Well, you own the license to watch it or play it or blah, blah, blah. That was always the fine print, but then it's like now they're actually at the point where it's like, no, we're actually going to enforce that now. Because back in the day, it's like, what the fuck are you going to do? Like, oh, you own the license to play this, to own like Star Wars on VHS. You're not supposed to resell it. It's like, fuck you, I'm going to resell it. I don't fucking care. But now they're being like 10 times more strict about this. And what is even worse about this one is that apparently Nintendo can do this and they have no repercussions if they get it wrong. Like, if they detect that you're playing a modded thing on your Switch 2, and even if you are not actually playing a modded thing on your Switch 2, they can brick your console, and because you agree to the terms, you can't do anything about it. And that's really fucked up. Like, just genuinely. And you need to understand, this is the reason, another reason why this is so draconian is because Nintendo honestly really has a really skewed perspective on what the fuck piracy and modding is. The official Nintendo YouTube account wanted to have like an official Let's Play of a Pokemon game, and they wanted to play a Nuzlocke. If you don't know what the term Nuzlocke is, it is where you play a Pokemon game with an added difficulty of yourself, where instead of your Pokemon being able to be revived, when they faint in the game, they are considered dead, and you cannot use that Pokemon anymore. An added difficulty level for the game. That is like, if Nintendo's not going to do it, why can't the people independently choose to do a Nuzlocke? And Nintendo, when they were told this, they said, no, you can't do this, because we consider that a form of piracy. It's like, how is that piracy? It's playing a game that you're selling. And keep in mind, this is about alleged like media piracy. Oh no, the game that that people have been clamoring you to be released for millions of years, Mother 3, is being downloaded online. Oh no! Maybe if you release the game, they would not pirate the game. How dare they steal money even though the mod is completely free online and they're not buying it from anybody and you're not selling it, so you can't give them money regardless. How dare they? How dare they play the sequel of the game that they really love and you won't sell? That is so terrible. Again, like, what? But luckily, there's a country out there that is willing to try and save the day, because Brazil has announced that they're going to be starting a lawsuit against Nintendo for this action. On June 25th, the Sao Paulo branch of the Brazil's Consumer Protection and Defense Program, Procon SP, shared a press release requesting Nintendo to change its end license agreement. Procon SP initially stated Procon SP notified Nintendo requesting a change to its clauses considered abusive in contracts signed with Brazilian consumers. The main complaint involves the unilateral and unjustified cancellation of subscription and company services. Basically stating, like, look, Brazilians bought the Switch. They bought the games. At that point, what they do with it is on them. Now, we basically have to wait and see how this lawsuit plays out, but again, to me, this is like a big W for Lula and Brazil, because I mentioned this before, I mentioned this in a Pink Tide ranking video where I pointed, like, basically the fact that Brazil is kind of like one of the, for some reason, one of the leading figures in regards to copyright reform movement around the world is one of the reasons why I think Lula is probably one of the better Pink Tide leaders. Because like, that's the thing, that's the one issue that I talk about that no one else does. And Lula and Brazil apparently talk about it a lot. So yeah, I have to give props to Lula. He keeps earning that #1 spot. So yeah, with all that out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. Bolivia. Now, I've made a couple of videos on Bolivia already. Like, I made videos that kind of delve into somewhat Bolivian politics. Like, I made, like, the ranking of the pink tide list. So, of course, Bolivia got mentioned in 2 of the entries on the list. I made a video called My Problem with Mass ISP. I don't know the fucking acronym, like MAS, the Bolivian left-wing political party. I made a video in 2020, 2020, 2020, where it was the election that was going on at the time. I made a couple of Bolivia-related videos. Feel free to check any of those out if you haven't already. And as such, we've gone over like some of the Bolivian like situation at least since 2019, and I've also covered like the Bolivian situation in 2019 and a couple other videos. The David Pangman video, I covered a lot about like the Bolivian situation. But anyways, I mean, we're just gonna like do that fact. I mean, let's go as quick-ish, but not quick enough to explain like the prelude of this election. All right, so like most Latin American left-wing countries, Bolivia had a U.S.-backed military dictatorship from 1971 to 1982. Even after its transition to democracy, the coup leaders remained prominent in the country's politics. Things didn't change in the country's politics really until 2005, when a man by the name of Evo Morales was elected as an explicitly indigenous socialist candidate. And he did a lot of things for his country. He passed a constitutional reform that made Bolivia into a plurinational state, with the indigenous population actually officially getting like recognition. He increased the minimum wage by 50%, decreased the pension age to 58, raised social security payments, combated illiteracy, legalized coca, nationalized oil, broke ties with the IMF and the World Bank. Very prominent left-wing ideas, and as such, he became a figurehead for left-wing politics, alongside Hugo Chavez, Lula Silva, etc. He wasn't as hated as the former, but wasn't necessarily as liked as the latter. But he still was a very prominent world leader. Like, he got really prominent, especially when he would get into clashes with the West. Like most Latin American left-wing leaders, he got into clashes with the West. Like, there was one time where he was, like, very vocally supportive of Edward Snowden during his, situation. And then, he was in Russia during a meeting, and then they said, like, hey, would you allow Edward Snowden to seek asylum? And he's like, yeah, of course I would. And then when he was on his way back to Bolivia, every single European country basically said, like, hey, if you fly over us, we will shoot your plane down, land immediately, so we can start investigating you. And then because Julian Assange had leaked that Edward Snowden was on the plane in order to embarrass the West. And sure enough, they did get embarrassed because it was like nothing happened. So Evo would become very notable for his outspoken left-wing beliefs and his antithesis to the West. Again, he wasn't as, in the ideological spectrum, he would be in between Chavez and Lula in regards to ideology. Like, I guess he would be a little bit closer to Chavez, but again, he wasn't as, demonized and hated as Chavez, but he wasn't necessarily as, declawed as Lula. And one thing that became more noticeable with that, kind of showing, is look, if you look at how the coverage of these three was at the time period, you can see that there was a bit of difference, because Lula was at least somewhat more conciliatory to people of the traditional Washington politics, to the point where at the time his victory in Brazil was actually seen as a victory for the so-called Clinton and Blair Third Way. Meanwhile, Chavez was, of course, demonized as this evil, socialist communist dictator. And Evo Morales was, again, he was a little bit he teetered. He teetered a little bit on, the levels of the two. And one of the things that really got people's attention in regards to, hating and or liking Evo Morales was when it was time for him to leave office. You see, because one of the things that his constitutional referendums did, his constitutional reforms, made it so that in Bolivia, you could only have 2 terms as president. That was one of the big things. But here's what happened. Evo Morales made the case, hey, these constitutional referendum, this constitutional reform, it only happened at the end of my first term. So technically, it coincided with, the beginning of my second term. So technically, this second term is really just my first term underneath the new constitution. So that means I can run for a third term because this is technically my second term. Now, for people who might be raising their arms like, oh, that's a bit suspicious, I need to remind you that the United States actually did a similar thing, because in the United States, FDR died, and then after FDR died and Harry Truman, succeeded him, it was then time, the Republicans passed a bill that made it so that term limits was a thing in the U.S. presidency. And then Harry Truman won a term in his own right, and then he said, everyone agreed, technically, since this happened during your actual first elected term, you can run for another term, because this would be your second term underneath this system. And he did try briefly before he ended up dropping out. Evo actually did run and win that third term. And everyone was like, okay, this makes sense, but no more Evo. And Evo's like, okay. But then in the lead up to the next election, Evo Morales was publicly talking about the idea that maybe he would be interested in seeking a fourth term, but everyone was like, you can't do that. And that's when he pushed for a referendum on term limits in 2016, where he was like, hey, let's just abolish term limits. And despite the fact that Evo Morales said, hey, we'll just let this referendum play out, and if his referendum, fails, I guess I'm out. Despite the fact that it did fail, narrowly, he argued that there was some shenanigans in that poll. Maybe we should just get rid of term limits anyways. So he went to the courts and argued that term limits in and of themselves were a human rights abuse. So the court said, okay, that makes sense. And then Evo Morales ran and won that fourth term. Now, whether or not you agree with the legal finagling to get that fourth term, Evo Morales followed the legal parameters to do what he did. It wasn't a self-coup. It wasn't like a whatever. It wasn't like that. It was like legal loophole shenanigans, but it was technically legal. Now again, you could also even argue it shouldn't have been legal. That's a fair point. But the point is, he followed the law. And due to this fact, there was already a lot of problems going into this election, which only got exacerbated when the actual tally started coming in. You see, the way Bolivia and other Latin American elections go is that they have a preliminary count that goes up to a certain point. Usually, basically every single country has sort of a preliminary count and then an official count. But the idea is the preliminary count basically just gives you a general idea of how the vote is. Depending, its accuracy probably is accurate enough. It's accurate enough that you can tell who's winning the election. But the official result doesn't come in. In America, we have that same thing where it's on election night, we see we have those results coming in. Those aren't the official results. The official results happen a week later when all the votes have been tallied. And the way Bolivia's works is it goes up to a certain point in the night, and then at one point it's just okay, we're gonna stop the preliminary count, and then we're gonna officially start doing the official count. And that's what's gonna be published the day afterwards. The preliminary count is literally just for the news stations to have this candidate is winning in this area and this candidate's winning in this area, and then the day after is when there's okay, after all the results are coming in, here's the official results. And here was where the problems arose. You see, right before the votes were slated to be we're not gonna count them anymore, we're gonna go to the official count, it showed Evo Morales with 45% of the vote over Carlos Mesa's, his largest opponent's, 38%. And basically, the point was, if that was the case, then that meant that there was a chance that Evo Morales would have to go to a runoff, which was a big deal. Evo Morales had never gone to a runoff in any of his electoral runs prior. He always won resounding landslides. And the way Bolivian elections go is that you either have to win over 50% of the vote in the first round to not get into a runoff, or the vote total in between the two candidates has to be at least 10 points. So Evo Morales, it would have been 7 points, so he would have had to go to a runoff with Carlos Mesa. But Carlos Mesa was a little bit mad, saying, hey, what the heck, man? Why aren't you publishing any more of the result totals? And they're but wait, hold on, no, you don't understand. We can't, we're at the point where we have to start publishing the actual results now. And he's like, no, you can't do this. No. And so when they ended up having to recounting them again, the results shot up to the point where Evo Morales got 47% to Carlos Mesa's 36%, which gave Evo a 11% lead, a massive drop from the previous landslide results, where he literally got like over, like, I mean, literally, some of the previous elections, he got like over 40% above the other person. And it's just like, it's clearly showing that there was some discontent with Evo Morales that time around, but it was just enough that Evo could have avoided a runoff. And due to these results, Carlos Mesa claimed there's no way that the results could have shot up this much. There must have been some electoral rigging. Now, despite the fact that Evo Morales was like, this is obvious bullshit, I will listen to, like, because Carlos Mesa then demanded, like, the UN, the OAS, all you guys get involved. And then Evo Morales, you know, normally, like, I mean, because this is, again, this is to show a difference. Because, like, people made the claims, like, people make these kind of claims about a lot of other people. But conveniently, almost all the time, the situation always goes that they do not want people to come in to vet the elections, because there would be obviously proof of election rigging. But Evo Morales did the exact opposite. He gladly accepted the UN and OAS to come aboard. He gladly said, please audit my elections. I want you guys to see how verifiably accurate these elections were. The OAS would then make the claim that there were some irregularities. Like, they made the claim that there was, like, at least enough. Like, I don't know if the official results stated that there was enough to really, like, sway the election, but they said, like, there was just enough that they raised an eyebrow. To the point, and that actually even led to Evo to be like, you know what, guys? Fine. You know what? If there's some irregularities, there are irregularities. You know what? If there's concern, let's have another election. I'll gladly call another election. Let's just do another one. Let's do a round 2. In fact, I'll even give you a bonus. I won't run. I won't be the candidate. You guys can run an election without me. There could be no claim of election rigging if I'm not even an option on the ballot. However, that didn't really seem to be what the Bolivian opposition wanted, because a lot of Bolivians started getting really antsy and, like, rushed to the streets to start rioting. Like, they were out for blood. Many members of Evo's parties had their houses burned down, and in the town of Vinto, protesters broke into the office of the mayor, Patricia Arce, a member of Evo Morales' political party, beat her, cut her hair off, drenched her in paint, forced her to walk barefoot for 2 miles while they spat and pissed on her. So it's pretty clear they wanted a little bit more than just another free and fair election. That wasn't the problem. And it even got to the point where, at the behest of the Bolivian military, Evo Morales would resign and leave the country. Now, despite the fact that there's actually a legitimate process of presidential succession, the opposition must have conveniently forgot that, because they just picked whoever the fuck they wanted to be the person who would, like, take over Evo Morales' place. And the person they chose was a woman by the name of Janine Áñez, who made the opposition's true intentions very clear on day 1 of her presidency by stating, and I quote, "God has allowed the Bible to enter the palace again." She formed relationships with Israel, removed the Huifala as Secretary of Flag of Bolivia, and when the indigenous people were not happy with how her administration was being done, they started holding demonstrations against her. And Áñez would respond by sending the military to go murder them in the towns of Sacaba and Sencata. Another big thing that happened during her tenure was her very obvious attempts to try and put Evo Morales in jail, with the biggest case brought against him being multiple accusations of statutory rape. And while there was some credibility to some of the allegations, there was one major controversy surrounding one of the alleged victims, Noemi Meneses, who was put under house arrest, starved for 2 days, and forced to give testimony under duress, which led to some questions regarding the case against him. Like, the situation regarding Meneses was fucked up for real. I mean, basically, the situation with Meneses, it's a very complicated situation. Basically, the thing is, she knew Evo Morales when she was a young girl. She knew Evo Morales at the very least when she was, I think I have it in the notes here, at least up until she, like, I don't know if it's in the notes, but, like, I remember she knew Evo Morales at least since she was 14 years old, if I remember correctly. I think the accusation is, like, she, like, says that she was 16 at the time, but then they, like, checked, like, her records and, like, maybe you knew him back when you were 14? But, like, at one point, when she was an adult, her and Evo Morales did engage in some sort of, like, relationship. And basically the whole point of the case is to determine, did the situation start before she turned 18 or after, because if anything happened before, that would be considered statutory rape. But the thing is, Meneses is a huge supporter and fan of Evo Morales. Obviously, if she's going to have a relationship with him, she was clearly a fan of him in some capacity. But her being put in this situation by the coup government basically made it so that everybody who was in Mas, who was loyal to Evo Morales, turned their back on her because they saw her as a traitor to the cause because she was speaking ill of Evo Morales. However, when she would later renege on some of her previous criticisms and stated like the situation that was going on with her and her being put under duress by the Bolivian military, the people who were egging her on to be like, yeah, you can get Evo, are now, they turned their back on her as well. They basically like, they threw her under the bus. It's like, oh, fuck you. And then again, it's depressing in both sides of this. It's really fucking sad. And, well, Áñez, despite making the claim that she would only stay in office until early 2020 to hold new elections, not only did the elections have to wait until the end of the year, but she actually attempted to run in said elections. She inevitably had to drop out because the opposition was divided into 3 separate camps that were swallowing up any single support that would end up happening. Meanwhile, Evo's parties was having some issues of their own because they wanted to pick a guy who was very similar to Evo Morales, named David Choquehuanca. Like, that was their original plan. Their original plan was they wanted to have a ticket of David Choquehuanca and someone else. But what ended up happening is that Evo Morales basically said, hey guys, great idea, but I have a better idea. How about instead of David Choquehuanca for president, he can be the vice presidential nominee? And the person I will choose to be the nominee is a man by the name of Luis Arce, who is a background cabinet minister for Evo Morales. Luis Arce would, of course, end up winning the election, and he would end up being a very strange candidate, because he was both a mix of hope and change alongside a let's get things back to the way they were before. In my Pink Tide ranking video, I literally put like Warren Harding and Eugene Debs in the same like picture. It's like, yeah, like it literally was like that. Like on one end, he was like running as this like massive like socialist candidate, and on the other end, he was running as a bit more like a return to normalcy guy. But like one of the big things about him is like Evo Morales was of course like a fierce like indigenous like activist type candidate. Meanwhile, Luis Arce, as I mentioned before, was like a background cabinet minister. Like he was the guy who knew how to work things in like the official governmental sphere. Like in every single left-wing movie, you need the guys who are the pencil pushers who are willing to do the boring stuff. And you also need the guys who are willing to get on the stage and like grab the megaphones and be like, yeah, like you need both those types of people. Especially if you're going to actually try and do governance, you need someone to do that. Like in the fucking like Cuban Revolution, Che Guevara was put in the position like, hey, you're now a desk worker now. It's like, I don't want to do this shit. It's like, they needed a desk worker. Cuba got liberated. You need to actually have a desk worker to like actually govern the fucking country. I mean, you really didn't get that much difference between the Evo administration except Arce. Like basically, Arce basically just did what Evo did with like a slightly more like, not necessarily social democratic, but like it was very obviously that he was not as left-wing as Evo. The only really unique thing about Arce was that he specifically focused his attention on punishing the people who helped commit the coup against Evo Morales. Like Janine Áñez would end up being arrested because of her role in the coup. Now, one of the big controversies for Arce going into the election and the early administration of him was basically one question. What about Evo? Like, what is the situation? Like they don't know what the fucking situation with Evo Morales was. Like, he was still the leader of the Mas party. He was still their leader. So it was like, what role is he going to play in the administration? And Arce and Evo said the same thing. There is no role he will play in the administration. Arce going so far as to say, Evo Morales has served his purpose, and it is time for us to move forward and a new face. I'm a new face. I'm representing a new wave of the party. And Evo Morales might like work as like a good leader of the party, but he will not play an active role in the presidential administration. And I've been desperately trying to find a fucking news article. Because there's one news article that I distinctly remember. This is the thing. I distinctly remember, I don't know if this was like said in a metaphorical sense, but I remember this is the exact thing that happened. Evo Morales returned to Bolivia. Like, it was a big deal. Like, oh, Evo Morales, he's returned to Bolivia. But I remember he actually went to the presidential palace after Arce got sworn in. And Arce turned him down because, again, Arce said, look, Evo, you served your purpose. I am now the president now. I'm running as my own candidate. As I said during the presidential election, I am running as my own candidate. And that ended up leading to Evo Morales to start attacking Arce. Because it seems that Evo Morales was lying and saying like the only reason why he was telling people like that was so that they could elect Arce without having Evo Morales over his shoulder. But it seems like Evo Morales wanted to be over his shoulder. Even to the point where Evo Morales would actually start regurgitating some talking points that the Bolivian opposition used against him. Like literally. There was a point where literally he made the claim that the Bolivian courts were stacked by Arce in order to hurt Evo Morales. Even though, again, that was the exact same thing that they said about Evo Morales. Like, he was stacking the courts against them. Even to the point where he was making, like, these very strange accusations that every single thing that Arce was doing in his administration was a secret ploy to try and get Evo Morales and ruin the party from within. The fact that the court was continuing to investigate the statutory rape accusations, secret ploy against Evo. The fact that the courts ruled against Evo Morales' term limit law, secret ploy. He literally even made the claim that, like, this is the thing. Okay, this is the weird story that happened. Okay, so remember the short-lived, like, I mean, you might not remember this, but you might remember this, but, like, there was a short-lived coup attempt against Luis Arce, because here's what happened. Let's go into a little bit about it. So the coup, because there was a general, I guess I need to explain. Like, Evo Morales, due to his criticisms of the Arce administration, was trying to make a political comeback, making the insinuation that he might run for president in the upcoming Bolivian election. And the general of the Bolivian army, named Juan Jose Zuniga, said, "We will try and do everything in our power to stop Evo Morales from becoming president of Bolivia by any means necessary." And due to that fact, Luis Arce said, "Hey, it's a little bit weird. You're fired," and forced him to resign. And then that guy got so mad that he basically tried to organize a short-lived coup against Luis Arce. And that coup ended up failing. Zuniga got arrested. And basically what happened at the time, everybody was really, really like, oh yeah, like Luis Arce is so cool. But then almost immediately after the coup happened, even though during the coup, Evo Morales was making this big plan, like, we need to unite together to defeat the evil coup plotters. Almost immediately after the coup ended, he made the claim that Luis Arce actually tried to do the coup himself, and was doing it as a secret ploy to boost his popularity in the upcoming presidential polls. Because Evo Morales was being included in polls, and Evo Morales was polling better than Luis Arce. Which makes no sense, because the whole point of the coup was that he was trying to kill Luis Arce so that he could kill Evo Morales. So if Luis Arce wanted to just have Evo Morales not in the situation so he wouldn't run, he literally would have just let Zuniga just do what he was going to do. Because again, Zuniga literally said that he was going to stop Evo Morales by any means necessary. Sure, he implied that he was originally going to seek a jail sentence, but he said, again, by any means necessary. If he really wanted you out of the game, he had an out. He literally had an out. And the big problem is that this conflict with Evo Morales has basically taken up the entire latter half of Luis Arce's term, to the point where MAS has basically become completely divided. There are two sides of the aisle. One is basically like, yes, we love Arce. The other side says, we love Evo. And it was just there was even the point where the members of MAS who were loyal to Evo literally teamed up with the Bolivian opposition to help steamroll certain legislation that Luis Arce wanted, specifically so that Luis Arce didn't have anything to run on. Like, the one specific example I could find was that Luis Arce left the country for a brief time, and then the Evista faction pushed for a bill that would ban reappointed judges from being on the court. And when Arce returned, he threatened to possibly arrest the president of Senate for doing so, believing that that action justified a legislative coup. And that ended up being like a big problem, like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what do you mean? So what ended up happening is that now the Bolivian left has gotten super massively divided over this drama, to the point where there's no route for fucking elections. Evo Morales was banned from running for re-election because term limits were re-implemented, and Luis Arce, his political capital was so ruined by Evo Morales that he was forced to drop out. So the Bolivian left is basically in a very tough situation nowadays. And with that, let's get into the candidates. Now, this election has 9 candidates. I'm mentioning 10 because I was too lazy to edit the thumbnail. Because the thumbnail has a guy from the centrist New Patriotic Generation Party called Jose Carlos Sanchez Verezen. And he was like, basically his whole party had this party was basically in and out of the election because they wanted to run a certain guy, but then this guy was the placeholder, and then this guy didn't want to run either, so it's like nobody's gonna run, so it's like whatever. They just all like fucking like out. So again, I'm too lazy to edit the thumbnail, so why not? Just the remaining 9 are actual candidates. Now, I would originally only go after the top candidates in this race, but I mean, there's only 9 of them, and also because the situation regarding the Bolivian left wing is kind of maybe in a position where it's like, at this point, any candidate is viable, really. Okay, so the first candidate that is worthy of actual mentioning is an engineer named Pavel Arancina. He's running with an alliance called the Freedom and Progress DNA, a coalition of a couple of parties, but the only ones of note are the Nationalist Democratic Action, a right-wing political party that was the vehicle of the former military dictatorship, and the Bolivian Socialist Falange, a far-right Falangist party. He's not really that much of note, but he's being mentioned anyways. Next candidate is the mayor of Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Johnny Fernandez. He represents an alliance called the People's Force, which is merely a vehicle for the Civic Solidarity Unit, a center-right political party. The next candidate is the mayor of El Alto, Eva Copa. She represents a new center-left indigenous party called the National Renewal Movement, also known as Morena. And before anybody goes to the comments, apparently, from the slight research that I've done, it might not be a coincidence. No, the name might literally be based off of the Morena from Mexico. The next candidate in the race is the senator of Tarija, Rodrigo Paz. He represents the Christian Democratic Party, which is, it espouses a more right-wing bend of Christian democracy, and yet Paz claims that he is a center-left candidate. The next candidate is the Minister of Government, Eduardo del Castillo. He's running under the Movement for Socialism Political Instrument for the Sovereignty of the People's ticket, the left-wing political party, MAS, ISP. I should have checked beforehand, but you get the point. He is the candidate of MAS. Basically, he's the candidate they were finally able to agree upon because I also should mention this next candidate before I get into a little bit of the candidate controversy. Okay, so the next candidate is Senator and former Senate President Andronico Rodriguez, a former MAS member, now running with a political party called the Popular Alliance, which is mostly a vehicle for the Third System movement, a smaller left-wing political movement. Now, this is where we have to get into a little bit of the controversy surrounding the MAS tickets. If you remember, Evo Morales, I mentioned before, Evo Morales wanted to run for president, but he couldn't. Luis Arce was running for president, but then dropped out. So MAS was in a little bit of a bind, because even during the controversy with that, there was a lot of people who were trying to figure out what to do. Originally, Rodriguez wanted to be the candidate who was the running mate of Evo Morales. I don't know if he wanted to be the running mate of Evo Morales, but he was floated as the guy who would be Evo Morales' running mate due to his association with the Avista faction. And then some people floated the idea of maybe if they wanted to unify the ticket, maybe Luis Arce can be the head of the ticket and then Rodriguez can be the vice presidential candidate. And I guess Eduardo Castillo was floated as a name in the field at some point, but Rodriguez seemed to be the one that everyone was really, really focusing on. Like the Unity Bloc, the Unity Pact, which was the specific faction that really, they were the faction that wanted David Choquehuanca last time over Arce. And they were the guys that were really, really heavy on Rodriguez, especially after Evo Morales announced that he was going to leave MAS and then try to run in a separate ticket. But then the controversy surrounding MAS then would lead to Rodriguez to basically say, I'm not sure if this is really a good position for me either. Because here's the thing, even like at the time, he was very critical of Luis Arce. As I mentioned before, remember that like situation regarding that like that Senate thing where he's like, where Arce was like, I want to arrest the guy who's the head of the Senate who did this law. It was this guy, Rodriguez, did that. But he was also very critical of Evo Morales because of a couple of reasons. One, because of the big one that he really pointed out, especially with this election, is, yeah, Evo, it's all nice and good that you're really, really anti-Arce now, but quick question, who was the guy who made him the presidential nominee again? Like, I mean, I'm not even kidding, like, literally, Mas was literally on its way to pick a completely different ticket. Was on its way to pick a completely different ticket. Like, they wanted to pick a different ticket. Like, David Choquehuanca, remember, he was going to lead the ticket. He was the guy that was going to lead the ticket in the election of 2020. And then it was Evo Morales who made the decision. No, Choquehuanca, you get demoted to the second head of the ticket, and Arce is going to be the head of the ticket. Because he was like, Arce is easier to control. Arce is the guy that I want because I can control him. And there's another reason why Rodriguez is a little bit mad at fucking Evo in regards to the controversy starting in 2020. Riddle me this. I kept mentioning David Choquehuanca was the head of the original ticket. Take a wild guess who the second head on the ticket was. Rodriguez. He was going to be the vice presidential nominee. He was one of the names that was originally floated to be the Mas ticket later in the election. But it was decided that Rodriguez wasn't ready. He would be the vice president, and then Choquehuanca would be the head of the ticket. That was the plan of the Unity Pact. Then Evo Morales went over their heads and decided that he was going to be the guy, that it was going to be Arce Choquehuanca. So Rodriguez was literally originally snubbed by Evo, and then Evo wanted to then turn around and be like, hey, dude, can you be my vehicle for power? It's like, I think it looks like everybody's fucking done with fucking Evo. Even the Unity Pact, who ran to endorse Evo Morales the original time, then flipped to join Rodriguez's possibility of being a presidential candidate before switching again to now be behind Castillo. But anyways, next candidate, the mayor of Cochabamba, Manfred Reyes Villa, he's running under the political party Autonomy for Bolivia, or SUMATE, which is a broadly center-right, anti-communist, populist, liberal conservative party. Again, it's basically a broadly center-right political party. The next candidate is 36th Vice President of Bolivia and brief Bolivian President Jorge Quiroga, who is running under the Libre Alliance, and a broadly centrist political alliance of the Social Democratic Party, a hard-right political party that was the party that Áñez was affiliated with, and the Revolutionary Left Front, a formerly Marxist-Leninist turned Social Democratic or right-wing populist party. Apparently, its label is currently unclear, but mostly it's just an anti-Mas political movement. And the last candidate in the race is the former Minister of Planning and Coordination and the Vice President of the Socialist International's Latin America wing, Samuel Doria Medina, who is currently running under the Unity Bloc, a centrist anti-Mas political coalition of two political parties, the National Unity Front, which is Medina's political party. It used to be a social democratic party, but now is broadly a neoliberal party, yet somehow gets a position in the Socialist International. And his other political party is the party of Creemos, or We Believe, a far-right political party founded by Luis Fernando Camacho, who has been called by many the Bolsonaro of Bolivia, who is currently in jail for his participation in the electoral coup that happened in 2020. Another thing I should note about these presidential candidates is that a lot of them are former presidential candidates in their own right. Johnny Fernandez ran in 2002. Manuel Reyes Villa was a presidential candidate in 2002 and 2009. Jorge was a candidate in 2005 and 2014. And Samuel Medina was a three-time presidential candidate in 2005, 2009, 2014, and was briefly the vice presidential nominee of Janine Áñez. I forget if I said that or not, but regardless, I'm saying it again, because it's very important to mention. Now, for the sake of this, let's just look over some of the presidential results of the previous candidates, and let's just see how things go. Okay, so first, 2002, Evo Morales got 20%, like a little right under 21%. Manuel Villa, he actually didn't get that far ahead. He didn't get that far underneath Evo Morales. Like, it was like Evo Morales got 20.94% in 2002, and then Villa got 20.91. Fernandez got basically, like, he got 5.51%. So clearly we know one of the two is a bit more of an electoral threat. And this was the election before Mas actually got control of Bolivia. 2005, which is when Mas started seeing its actual political viability, it was where Quiroga and Medina were his primary opposition. And Mas got 53.74% over Jorge's 28.59%, with Medina getting a solid 7.8%, which pretty notable results for Evo, at least. The next election, we basically swap out Quiroga for fucking Villa, and it's 64.22 for Evo, 24.46 for Villa, and 5.65% for Medina. Clearly Medina's not doing so hot, at least not until the next election, where Evo Morales gets 61.36, Medina gets 24.23, and Quiroga comes back, getting a solid 9.04. And yeah, these guys, like, clearly, hold on, wait, let me see. They didn't show up again in 2019, right? No, 2019 was when most of the guys decided to sit that one out. I don't know why that specific election they chose to sit it out, but regardless, you can clearly tell that Quiroga and Medina are very clearly, like, they're clearly not fans of Evo Morales or Mas if they keep showing up to the election booth. I sadly haven't been able to find much of the issues or events that have been going on in the election, but with that, we can just jump right into the polling. And polling is where we're going to have to get in some, let's just say, not so good things for the election. Now, before the registration, polls have been going on a lot. Arce was originally polling really well, as the Mas candidates, but as the controversy with Evo Morales has become a bit more troubling, his poll numbers dropped to the point where, at one point, Arce's one of his last polls before he withdrew his candidacy, he had 1% of the vote. And Rodriguez, when he was still being proposed as the Mas candidate, last poll had him at 25%. But ever since the official registration of candidacies, things have not been going so well. Let's just take a look at the polls. Okay, so the first poll was conducted on the May of 22nd to the 26th of this year. All the polls only have 2,500 people who showed up, but they do show numbers that are very interesting. So first, we can skip the fucking tiny guy that nobody gives a shit about. And Morena's candidate got 1.7%, Castillo got 2.3%, Fernandez got 3.7%, Paz got 4.3%, Villa got 7.9%, Rodriguez got 14.2%, Quiroga got 18.4%, and Medina got 19.1%. Similar numbers happened in a poll that was released early June, which showed Medina with a 24%, and Quiroga with 22%, and Rodriguez with a 14.7%. And the poll that was conducted more in the middle of June, 19.6% for Medina, Quiroga with 16.6%, Rodriguez with 13.7%. And just for the sake of understanding, Mas's candidate is not doing well at all. Castillo is basically polling the exact same levels as Copa. 1.7 versus 1.4 in the early June poll, and 1.4 to 1.1 in the most recent poll. And this was before the first debate, where for some reason, Rodriguez decided to sit it out. I don't know how it's going to go. I can't watch the debate. I don't speak Spanish. Very unfortunate. But yeah. Conclusion/support. The one big conclusion I'll say right here is that Bolivia's probably fucked. And it's all Evo Morales' fault. It seems the two options that are going to be possibly in the presidential palace of Bolivia are going to be a guy who helped to lead the coup, or the guy who's representing the party that helped lead the coup. So it's It's 100% Evo Morales' fault. I'm sorry, like, I just gotta be real. This is 100% fucking Evo Morales' fault. Call me out all you want. Evo Morales' inability to let go of power is directly what led to this. Again, whether or not you argue that there are legitimate criticisms, like, there are probably legitimate criticisms of Luis Arce. But the fact of the matter is, Luis Arce was overall a better president than you could even really say. I don't really see much of I really have yet to see any real, like, actual controversial problems that Luis Arce has done. The only thing that seemed to be really mad was that Evo Morales wanted to be president and Luis Arce wouldn't let him. And as we all know, my endorsement really matters in this election. Because as we all know, there are so many people from Bolivia that are watching this video right now. I mean, it's not true. I mean, I literally posted a thing in my Discord. I might post it on like the YouTube thing. I might post an updated one if I go through the analytics again. But like, the analytics did show that I might just include it in the video or not, whatever. It showed that there is literally no person in Bolivia that watches this fucking channel. It's one of the very few Latin American countries that apparently doesn't watch my videos, apparently. And as much as I'd like to give an empty gesture, I can't really find any information about any of the candidates, really, in regards to their specific platforms that could really draw me towards them. Like, I mean, I could really see benefits and drawbacks to any of the three candidates. Like, I mean, on one end, it's kind of be funny to be like, haha, lol, I back Morena in Bolivia too, haha, I love Morena, haha, it's funny. But it's like, okay. I mean, I'd also love to, like, love to back Eduardo due to loyalty to Mas, but Mas has fallen so much that there's no point in doing that either. And the really big thing is that I don't really want to back Enrique Rodriguez due to his association with the EPSTEIN faction and the sort of, like, reason, like, he's kind of in one of the faults for why Bolivia's in this position that we are today. But my political ideology does state that, in a practical sense, the highest polling leftist option should be the one that I back. And, well, he is the highest polling leftist. I don't know, I guess, I mean, I might put this into a fucking, like, Bolivia poll. Like, I'm gonna put this into a poll for this week and just be like, hey, what do you guys think? If you were in Bolivia, who'd you vote for in this election? Because, again, like, I can't really find any information really about, like, the specific things about either of these. Like, because all these three candidates broadly say similar things. They're left-wing and they're indigenous, like, focus. That's their broad thing, because, like, that is literally, like, the electoral base of the left wing in Bolivia. So again, there's really not much else I can say, except hopefully Bolivia pulls through and finds a good candidate to be in the runoff, at least. Don't go down without swinging, my friends. But it looks like Pink Tide might not be returning to Bolivia in the short term. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to find out future video of mine comes out. And if you need more content from me, consider supporting me on Patreon.